And now it's time for the news. And this is a little bit different than we've done news in the past here. We did news for a while, and I thought we'd make it a little more fun this time. So we're just going to have some fun with it. The criteria I made is we're going to give a quick summary of a news point, and then I have to give that news a score out of 3 tacos. So I don't know exactly what tacos mean in this context. You can decide for yourself, but I'm going to give it a score, number of tacos out of 3, and follow it up with a 1-sentence opinion. It has to be in 1 sentence. I didn't limit how many qualifiers and ands I can include in that sentence yet. We'll see how that goes. The first news topic we have is on the upcoming React optimizing compiler. So the React Labs team has published some updates on the development of the new optimizing compiler they're working on called React Forget. I don't know if that's been really published before, but yeah, it's apparently called React Forget. The compiler is designed to ensure that React apps have just the right amount of reactivity by default, rendering only when state values change in a meaningful way. This approach automates memoization, which can otherwise require manual intervention. It definitely does require manual intervention. The compiler is almost completely decoupled from Babel and will interface with Babel and other build system plugins, they note. And they also note that Facebook has been testing the compiler internally and will open source it once it has been proven in production. And how many tacos am I going to give it? This one gets 3 tacos. A compiler specific to React will open up so many possibilities. And now I'm not as hungry as I was before. 3 tacos in, right? So our next news point, again, comes from the React Labs team about React server components. So they're providing some more updates on that. And if you, of course, want to know more, I have a few episodes on React server components at this point, going really far in depth. So this is just going to be a quick summary. But yeah, they've provided some updates on React server components. And the React server components are a new application architecture which combines the request response mental model of server-centric multi-page applications with the quote seamless interactivity of client-centric single-page apps. So server components run ahead of time and are excluded from the JavaScript bundle that gets sent to the browser. They can run during the build, allowing you to read from the file system or fetch static content, and they can also run on the server, allowing access to the data layer without having to build an API. It essentially eliminates the API from your front-end application. And back-end, so to speak, depending on how you architect things. Data can be passed by props from server components to interactive client components in the browser. So since the last update, the React team has merged the React server components RFC and resolved outstanding issues with the React server module conventions proposal. Async await has been introduced as the primary way to do data fetching from server components. And the team plans to support data loading from the client by introducing a new hook called, quote, use that unwraps promises. The team is also exploring sending data from the client to the server by allowing the passing of server action functions across the server-client boundary, providing seamless RPC. React server components have shipped in the NextJS app router, but the team emphasizes in this post that there's a clear separation of features provided by their RFC spec and implementation. While it is possible to build your own React server component compatible framework, the current generation of bundlers is not designed to support splitting a single module graph between the server and the client, making this more difficult, they say. Therefore, the team is partnering directly with bundle developers to incorporate RSC primitives into bundlers. Whew. All right, we got through that. And I'm giving this one 3 tacos as well. You don't have to use React server components, but having the ability to use them is fantastic in my opinion. And I'm especially interested in this new ability they're talking about to share data back from client to server components. It's really hard. I want to say more, but I'm limited to 1 sentence. All right, so I think we have one more thing real quick here from the React Labs team, and that is off-screen rendering. The React Labs team also provided an update on how they have been working on off-screen rendering, which is an upcoming capability in React for rendering screens in the background without additional performance overhead. Off-screen rendering can be used to pre-render screens, preserve the state of hidden tabs, and pre-render additional rows, for example, virtualized list components. The team believes that most React developers will not interact with React's off-screen APIs directly. Instead, off-screen rendering will be integrated into routers and UI libraries, and developers who use those libraries will just benefit automatically. So when a component is rendered off-screen, it does not actually mount until the component becomes visible and its effects are not fired. For example, if a component uses use effect to log analytics when it appears for the first time, pre-rendering it won't affect the accuracy of those analytics. Additionally, when a component goes off screen, its effects are unmounted as well. One key feature of off-screen rendering is that you can toggle the visibility of a component without losing its state. So the React team has they've said that they've tested an experimental version of pre-rendering internally at Meta in the React Native apps on Android and iOS, and they've had positive performance results. I don't really know what that means, but that's what they say. They've also improved how off-screen rendering works with suspense, and the remaining work involves finalizing the primitives that are exposed to the library developers. The team plans to publish an RSC later this year alongside an experimental API for testing and feedback. Okay, so I originally thought I was giving this 3 tacos, but just reading through it again, I'm only giving it 2. I've already eaten a lot of tacos, and I mean, so I think this shows the power of the underlying design of React and how it is possible to create some really cool new architecture from it. But at the same time, this sounds pretty far off, so I'm going to reserve at least some tacos until this actually gets developed further. Our next news topic is a real quick one where I just want to talk about a tweet from Dan Abramov, one of the largest contributors to the React project. And Dan is on the React team at Facebook or Meta or whatever they want to call themselves these days. So Dan tweeted, "We've changed our forms recommendations to emphasize uncontrolled inputs a lot more. This will become even more powerful with React server components because it'll be able to refresh server data automatically." All right, so I'm only giving this 1 taco for now. Well, I think uncontrolled form components are the quote right way so that state is only stored in one place, in the browser in this case. I find working with uncontrolled components in React to still be cumbersome, and I would love to see some. And the last news topic for today is NextJS 13.3 has been released. So yeah, NextJS, the popular framework-ish. It's a bunch of tools for React. I don't know what you want to call it. I guess definitely framework at this point, built on top of React. So they have added some community requested features like a file-based metadata API, dynamic open graph images, and static export for app router, as well as some more advanced routing features. So you can use file-based metadata to conveniently customize pages for improved SEO and sharing on the web. And as a quick aside, I have used this and I generally like it. I don't love the API, but it's better than what I've had to do before. Anyways, dynamic open graph images can be generated using JSX, HTML, and CSS. And the NextJS app router now supports fully static exports, enabling faster page loads. Parallel routes and interception allow advanced routing cases like showing more than one page in the same view. That one looks interesting. I need to check it out more. And also loading a new route within the current layout while masking the browser URL. Again, I'm kind of interested in that one. Crap, I can't give my opinion yet. Anyways, other improvements include design updates, TurboPack support for middleware, fast refresh for nextconfig.js, accessibility, statically typed links, and improved style sheet loading. All right, so for this last news piece, NextJS 13.3, we get to eat 2 more tacos. So many tacos. I hope they're like really good, right? I mean, they better be if I'm eating that many. So I think overall some nice updates, and I've been using this version of Next in like the beta form. I think they call it Canary or whatever, for a while for working on the website for the reactshow.com. And it's got some nice things, but I don't love the direction they've been going in with some parts of it with the annotations, like adding these just annotations to your files. I don't know, to me it feels like a code smell for bad designs. But overall, still a solid update. That's it for Next.js 13. And now I'm full of tacos. It's time to talk about how to actually use the new AI tools to work with React. All right, so first I will mention that I don't necessarily at this point think of all these new AI tools being developed as an overall beneficial way for us programmers or for society. I don't necessarily think it's going to make everything better in our lives or make our lives better. But I won't discuss that more here. You can check out the previous episode and my unhinged rant about AI if you actually want my random opinions on it. But this episode, we're going to focus more on what's relevant to us as React programmers, because the truth is, we may all need to take advantage of these tools to remain relevant and competitive in this competitive capitalist society we live in, right? So in this episode, we're going to dive deep into ChatGPT specifically and how to use it when you are programming, as well as covering some related AI topics beyond ChatGPT that should help with whatever AI you happen to be working with. But we are mostly covering ChatGPT because it is free and accessible. There are other tools, but accessing them has proven to be a challenge, at least for me. They seem to come and go and become available and not available on a weekly basis. And I'll also note that this field is changing extremely quickly and new tools are coming out all the time. So I want to focus a lot on how these tools work in general so that this information will be relevant and useless? Relevant and useful regardless of whatever specific updates or new tools come out in the future. At the end, though, we'll also cover a bunch of practical tips for working with things with ChatGPT, specifically as it is today. So you can go away from this episode and just directly start benefiting from it. But one more thing that we have to mention before we get into the rest of this is that the legality of using code produced by these AIs is still an open question. This is not legal advice. I'm obviously not a lawyer. But as I understand it, currently there's not established legal precedent for the legality of using source code produced by ChatGPT and similar AIs. So there have been some questions around this because the AIs may have been trained on source code that has specific requirements around its distribution, like with source code that comes from copyleft licenses like the GPL that require the license to be distributed with derived code. So the question is, if an AI is trained on code from, say, Linux or something with a copyleft GPL license, and then the AI produces some result based on that code because it was in its training model, is that derived code? Does it also need to distribute that GPL license with it? And then is your code now under that GPL license because it's derived from it? This seems to be an open question, and as far as I know, has not been settled by courts yet or anything. So right now, I will say that using source code produced by these AIs is sort of use at your own risk and may or may not prove to be legal at some point.